All right, sweet. So I got to introduce you as a formality.
Sure.
Super formal.
I love a good formal introduction.
Hassan wondered if I did any research. I said about 30 years, so that's good. We've known each other a long time.
Yeah.
I've learned so much from you. I think people that are going to watch this are going to learn that same stuff in a condensed time frame. You are, I think someone called you a serial entrepreneur in a magazine, and did you like that or not like that? I don't remember. I remember reading that with you, and I can't remember if you were like,
It almost, when somebody says serial entrepreneur, it almost makes it seem like they're not really happy with the first one. They're not really happy. That's kind of like
a
saying,
serial dater?
or a serial person who gets married, right? Oh, man, that person's a serial marriage person.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that? I don't know. Every few years or so, they don't like the husband or wife, so they move on and try to marry another one.
Yeah.
So
if that were the case, you'd be polygamous. Because you keep them and move on to the next one. And you keep them. Yeah,
exactly
you just keep the harem going.
But I will say, though, some don't work.
So
there are a few that have not worked. And that was some of the hardest things that, where you call it a serial entrepreneur or somebody that is somewhat opportunistic in that they see something that is broken, they want to fix it, and they want to get in that industry. And then, you put your blood, sweat, and tears in it, and then you realize it doesn't work. Yeah. Nobody sits there and teaches you, now's the time to pull the plug. That, unfortunately, you have to learn from experience.
Or to pull the starter. So one of the things I was thinking about talking to you about was what causes you to pull the starter on the next one?
You and I have talked about this a long time. People can sit and figure all day long. They could try to put numbers and financial equations and business models and marketing models and all of this stuff. But some of the most successful people that I have ever met that have had multiple businesses, successful businesses, they never sat there at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning drinking their scotch or their tequila with an Excel sheet, typing in a bunch of numbers, right? I always say that be careful busting out the calculator, because that's the devil's tool.
Yeah.
Every single time people sit there and they figure, and they either figure themselves into a bad decision or they figure themselves into a great opportunity, but that one other piece is missing, your gut. It's your gut.
Yeah.
And that's not taught, right? I think you could, if you don't truly have that innate ability to really feel something, to really close your eyes and visualize. That's another reason I tell people all the time, the power of visualization. You may think it's voodoo, but it's incredibly important. If you can't close your eyes and truly be real with yourself and go, can I actually see this be successful and expand and return results for investors if you've got investors behind you, don't do it.
And see myself operating in this and having fun and not being miserable every step of the way.
Right. That's the devil's tool. That's because people grab their calculator and they start multiplying. They see a big number.
Yeah.
Right. So
you think most people are so optimistic or slant optimistic? I mean, we hear all the time from insurance agents and advisors, and they all have big ideas. And out of 100 of those conversations, one of them, two of them actually works, but they've all penciled it out. They've all taken the calculator, put it on a spreadsheet. They have good graphics, and here it is. And then at the end of the day, it doesn't work.
Yes, but let me add to that a little bit, right? So that starter one should never be, I have got to figure out a way to make money. 2, sure, you have to know that you've got some money or you've got some investors behind you. I mean, you can't be stupid either, right? And just go all in with your gut and then take a mortgage out or a second mortgage out and all these things and then start thinking about the financial things as well. So don't get me wrong. The numbers part is incredibly important as well, but you just got to have that gut. You got to have that feeling, which is part of the visualization aspects that we've just talked about. But more importantly, don't sit there and pull that ripcord or pull that starter. You just got me visualizing the old school lawnmowers.
Yep, that's what I was visualizing.
Which brings me back to my first job
And my best dance move.
Exactly. There you go. Maybe later.
Yes.
Okay. Is not being motivated financially.
Yeah.
People that are solely motivated financially. Oh my goodness, I have to do this. I need to make money for me first and foremost because I'm not making it yet. Typically cut corners. They may make it, and there's nothing wrong with that. I've seen both paths play out successfully, financial wise. But a lot of those that specifically go, I've got to do this for me. I've got to make money immediately, and so this is what I'm going to do because I just know it. What happens is you get to a certain point in your life where now I got to make more. And now I got to make more, and now I got to make more. And I'm sure you can articulate just as well as I the millionaires, the multimillionaires, the billionaires that have done just that, and now they're in jail. Because because inevitably you get yourself in this momentous aspect in your life where you're going, well, shoot, I've promised X amount of returns. I've promised X percent growth in business year after year. What else can I do? And a lot of the times, it's either the gray area or the end consumer is what really gets it. Mm-hmm. The end consumer is what really ends up getting messed up. So the other part to that, how do I start? How do I open that up? How do I get going? Is consumer first, customer first. So,
motivated by somebody else other than you.
Exactly right. And how do I serve fully that end user? How do these businesses fully serve this individual, this person who's going to spend money or time on this product? And if I could do that without cutting corners, because I'm not motivated immediately by making a profit for myself so I could survive.
As quick as you can.
Hey,
yeah.
You work hard, you should get paid for it. So don't get me wrong, right? People should make great money, right? We've got businesses where our members are making great money and the consumers are making great returns. We're making great money as well. So don't get me wrong, that's not it. But I'm saying to start off is incredibly important, and you have to be very, very careful. And you've got to be honest with yourself, right? You've got to get yourself into that position where you can suffer some losses financially for 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, 12 months before you actually start making some money.
That's more normal than not.
That's right.
But how do you get that? How do you make that switch? I feel like most of the people that I encounter will not take on a task unless they see the green. They won't even go down the road because it's always motivated by money. And I think that starts to taper off, like compound almost. It starts to slowly get less and less until you've got multiple businesses and you're living a good life, and that's easy. But what about the person? What do you say to the person that is struggling or hates their job, and maybe they're not struggling, but they want to get off to something else? And it's a leap. It's a jump. There's no security on some of the more high-paying stuff. You have to create something or sell something or whatever. But that's going to be the money motivator initially. Can they flip that switch halfway through it too?
I think you need a good mentor. I think you need a great podcast. I think you need something and somebody that keeps you honest with yourself.
Accountable.
Accountable.
Yeah. And
I think that's incredibly important, right? I mean, mindset's incredibly important, but you also have to have somebody that makes sure you're being honest with yourself, and your mindset stays pure, stays right, and you have to answer a simple question. Well, clearly you're doing something else, and you want to really do something and be passionate about it. Do you have enough money saved up that will allow you to burn your boat and go all in? Doesn't necessarily mean you should or you have to every single time, every single moment. But if you say yes, then I think that you're putting yourself in the right situation, the right mindset with a good mentor, right? Knowing that you've got other pieces that you've got to look at to ensure the fact that you're not only protecting your integrity, but who you are trying to serve, theirs as well.
Yeah. And a mentor choice or selection for someone in your position might be very, very easy because people are gravitated towards you. You're successful at this point in life. And what about that person that's not struggling, whether it's financially or emotionally in their position or in their work, and they want that mentor that's the billionaire or the multi-millionaire? Do they have to go for that, or can it be? Would it be just as good to have a mentor that's one step beyond where you're at today, that continues to walk that path?
One step beyond, and it doesn't necessarily, a great mentor doesn't necessarily have to be a multimillionaire.
Right.
Right? It's somebody that you truly trust and that you believe in. Somebody who's, it doesn't matter, who's making $30,000, $40,000 a year, but there are certain things that they do in their life that no matter what, they still walk that line. I actually had an incredibly hard time finding a mentor. Even when somebody said that to me, I'm going, I don't even know what that means.
Right.
Like, what does that even mean, right? I mean, I got parents,
Right.
Right. I've got friends, and it took a long time for me to find who I ended up finding many years ago, who became an incredible mentor to me and said a few things to me that completely changed my trajectory, my business's trajectory, and you don't know what you don't know. For me early on, I'm going, who is going to tell me something that I'm not already anticipating or figuring out? Well, you really only know what, 0.000 something % of everything that you could even think about out there.
Right.
From mindset to how people purchase, to finances, to investing, to there's no way. But if you can get yourself with somebody that can say something to you that just keeps your mind right, that keeps your mind right. They don't have to be millionaires.
Someone
or
that you
billionaires.
respect, that deep down has your best interest.
That's right.
At heart.
That's right.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that, join a network, join a group, an association.
Go out and search for
Go
it.
out there and search for that. They're there. I didn't think they were for me. And, it was hapstance. I think it's one of those deals where you just put yourself out there, talk to people about what you do or what you like to do. It just happens in the most natural way.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily.
When you're searching for it.
You're searching for it. I mean,
Yeah.
how many times have you heard your friends or family members or whatnot say, "Boy, I tried for years to have a kid, and then as soon as I just stopped caring,
Right.
that's what happens." And
Yeah.
I think more people, we all need to look at life in general like that more, right? Sometimes we wake up, and sometimes we can get too regimented. And I'm not saying a good plan isn't important, but we also have to be careful. Balance. Life is a balance. It can't be too much one way and too much the other way. If you wake up every single day at 4:00 in the morning, you work out, great. But you know what? Leave some part of your life to spontaneity. Leave some of it to spontaneity. It's important,
Yeah.
right? It's exciting. Because if you get yourself so pigeonholed into this is how it has to be or this is how it should be, and it doesn't work that way, you don't really necessarily know how to react or to handle yourself in a situation where you're getting thrown into the deep end. Or you can't wake up at 4:00 in the morning. You know what people do? They lie. They say that they still do.
Right.
And you don't want to be that person.
So flexibility.
Yeah.
So you have 3 kids, a wife for a long time, businesses in the double digits at this point, right? Do you know the number off the top of your head? How many of them?
17.
17 businesses. How do you find that balance? Because I also know you have some routines. You have some really good routines. I've learned a lot of those routines, and they're good for you spiritually, mentally, physically. But when Carson comes knocking on the door and you're in the middle of it because it's part of the routine, how do you balance that?
I tell her to get in the shot with me. You roll with it. You roll with it. And I've seen the TikToks and the Instagram reels, and I've seen where it's like, no, stay back, no, right?
Right.
For me, I lean in. Life is as the amount of routines that you can put in place. There's certain times where you just got to put a smile on your face and laugh. You know, I work out. I don't know if anybody can tell over all the layers.
Yeah.
And
I've seen a few peeled off, and I can attest to that.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
thank you. And you know, one of the biggest things that I tell myself is, nothing happens in comfort. Right? When you're comfortable, it's not good for you. You got to get uncomfortable. Getting uncomfortable is when change happens. Is when success really starts to compound. So whether that's me running and saying, I'm comfortable here. Well, I'm not getting any better. I'm not bettering myself. Why am I doing this? Well, I'm doing this for my health. I'm doing this because I promised my kids and my wife that I'd live to 100 years old. That's my benchmark. And so every single time that I do something, whether it's running out or in any type of situation where regardless of your routines, something happens that's uncomfortable, lean in. Because that's when you may lean in, you may grab one of your kids, put them on your Zoom call, and then now you've got commonality with some other people, or your dog, or your cat, or your guinea pig. People do have guinea pigs still.
No,
Yeah,
that was a thing of the 90s.
They do still have guinea pigs.
And potbelly pigs.
I kind of feel like it's coming back.
It might be for some people.
But you know, bring them in the shot.
Yeah.
Because then that creates some, you know, vulnerability
And connection. Yeah.
It creates that connection. But you know, I try not to get on my soapbox here. But
that's literally what a podcast is.
That's really. Let me get on this. Let me get on this soapbox. Is vulnerability. I don't understand that with people. I mean, even some motivational individuals and whatnot out there, you know, everything is polished. This is exactly what I've done. And I've done it for a million years, and I'm a multimillionaire or a billionaire. Right? I want to hear more vulnerability. You know, I want to hear more. I stubbed my toe and I said a word that I what didn't work, or even as polished as you are, and something happens and you don't want it to happen because it could be embarrassing to you, lean in and go with it.
So the routine is, we met up with that Navy SEAL a couple years ago. That was part of our convention, Rourke, Denver, and I think he was talking about how the routine stops on the battlefield. So you do your routine to prepare yourself for those times when there can be no routine, because you never know what's gonna happen. And I think what you're saying, and I've seen this just from the outside looking in on some folks, where they're so rigorous in their routine that if anything comes in, like you said earlier, it shatters the rest of either their day or their week or their year, whatever, because they don't take that mindset where the routine is good. It builds you up. It gets you prepared. But then as soon as you step out into the real world, you better know that routine was only to get you prepared for that.
That's right.
And then that routine has to stop at some point. And then I hear all kinds, like if you go and look at all these motivational people and these coaches, and for every person that says this is the routine, the next guy will say, well, don't do this, do this. It's like picking stocks. Everybody has their own opinion, right, and everybody's right and wrong at different times.
Yeah, right.
Right? So find what works for you, get that routine, and then let that help you on the battlefield.
And be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Be comfortable with being uncomfortable. When you're on that battlefield, one of the things that he said is, well, now that you're there and now you're letting some instincts and gut and some other grit take hold, well, now what? Better your position.
Yeah, always.
And what's that? Does it stop? Does that ever stop? Well, doing so, you better be uncomfortable. You better be okay with uncomfortable, because you can't plan you can't plan it.
Right.
I mean, you could try, but a lot of that is leaning in on moments where you're in that unflexible, right? Where you're going, here I can't, I've got to be on and polished. That small little moment, that small little gap, right, which we always try to close, are moments that make you uncomfortable. And again, that's where change,
stretches
where change
you,
happens. That's
like
where
a rubber
change
band.
happens. Yeah, it will. Because you became stronger. Your mind becomes more tough. And you're able to roll with it once, you'll do it again.
Yeah.
And now instead of being reactive, maybe you'll put yourself in an offensive position and do that.
Right.
Now you're really pushing the envelope.
Right. And it's 17 companies. You have to be prepared for about anything. right?
Yeah.
I mean, looking back, I was just scrolling through photos, old photos, and looking back, I saw one of you under a desk. I mean, you were grinding. That I think that was a year. You might tell me it was multiple years that you were grinding.
Yeah.
And smiles always, but I mean that's a stressful situation. And then I've seen photos of you jumping in a hot tub fully clothed.
Yeah.
Saw that today.
That's right.
And so what that made me go, man, for somebody that has such a good routine and is so methodical when it comes to business. I mean, you think through everything. And then so impulsive and crazy on the other hand.
Yeah.
And just like, fuck it, let's do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
And that's a balance too. It's got to be a balance too.
It's a balance too. When you're working out or you're in a mode or in a situation like that, put a smile on your face. I guarantee if you're running or you're on a bike or you're pumping weight, look at yourself in the mirror. Are you doing it with a smile on your face? Some may say yes.
Yeah.
Put a smile on your face. I guarantee you the next time that you're working out when you're in an uncomfortable situation, you put a smile on your face, you'll get there at the end and you'll be that much happier.
And it'll just dramatically change almost instantly.
Almost instantly.
But being aware to stop and do that.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah. Well, and that's it. And that's what that's why we're here, right? We're talking about experiences and we're talking about things that have worked for you or that have worked for me. And it may not work for everybody.
Yeah.
But it may.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. If you haven't tried it, try it. Try it. So when I'm under the desk splicing Cat 6 cable and, terminating two ends to help.
And this is not as a technician, by the way. This is as somebody that owns the businesses.
Yeah.
Going in there and getting dirty.
Guarantee. If you looked at those pictures, I had a smile on my face. 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, I had a smile on my face. You have a choice. We all have a choice as to how we are going to take bad news, a positive diagnosis, a negative review on Yelp. We all have choices in life. Take them in stride. Nobody should ever tell you that you shouldn't feel your emotion, but put a smile on your face because I guarantee you'll be better off. And it'll just be much easier getting through that whole entire process. And
the choice is yours.
The choice is yours.
The choice is yours.
It's a choice.
Like grabbing a hammer and headed to your commercial real estate building, trying to stop a meth head.
Yeah.
At midnight.
Right. Exactly.
What do you think about when you find yourself in that position? I mean, first of all, you follow your business acquisitions and startups, and then you find yourself in real estate. Which I don't know if you would say is a passion, but it certainly served a purpose in the grand scheme of things. And you find yourself in real estate, and then you find yourself chasing down a meth head at midnight with a hammer. Do you ever stop and go, "What the fuck am I doing?"
Yeah, but you know what? I had a smile on my face. I knew that the police were behind me, and I was worried that there were tenants in one of our commercial buildings, and God forbid there wasn't. But if there was, I didn't want them to feel alone, and that I had a stuffed animal that I grabbed from my 5-year-old at the time.
Right.
So there was a little bit there too. But I mean there's all sorts of interesting moments where you kind of look back and reflect. But kind of getting back to that, taking things in stride and keeping a smile on your face. It's not just me saying that, right? I've seen people, my own father who was diagnosed with pancreatic islet cell cancer, told me he's not going to let that define his life. He had a great career as well, and he had an awesome family. And the doctors, I was there, gave him 6 weeks to live. And with a smile on his face, he said, "I'm not going to accept this. I'm going to do everything that you tell me to do, but I'm not going to accept this. I'm not going to let this fully absorb, and I'm not going to live my life as if I've got 6 weeks to live." So if somebody could be, who was diagnosed at 47 years old, who's now 71, can have used that approach, that simple approach to survive and to live, I'm sure we can all do that to try to accomplish being our own boss, finding our perfect retirement income.
The small ups and downs of day to day.
Ups and downs. It's not just some dude sitting here saying,
Perspective.
smile when you get kicked.
Right.
It truly is perspective, and I've seen it because it's given, that's one of the things that getting old will do, right? It gives you the ability to see how others do things well and great, and just try to take those little things. If there's one thing that I can tell your followers is be careful. Be careful with how you handle certain situations in life. Perspective is incredibly important, and it's okay to change your perspective every now and then. It's okay to change that. But again, you've got to have some great people around you to help you along the way.
To help you change it.
Yeah.
Because I would say the majority of people, myself included, are fairly stubborn when it comes to changing your perspective. Your perspective, right, is built up over years and years and probably handed down a little bit from parents or religions or wherever it comes from. And then you get confronted with a situation where you say, oh, wait a minute. What I have known for quite some time is maybe not accurate, and I have to change that. That's an incredibly difficult thing to do. How do you what makes you stop, right? Because when you're in the moment, and maybe you're in the middle of an argument and you're trying to win the argument, or in a business deal and you're trying to win the business deal, and you go, oh shit, maybe I am looking at that a little cockeyed. Is there a trigger? I mean, can you wear the rosary? Like, what makes you stop and think about that?
Yeah.
Because I just keep bowling forward.
Yeah, one of your kids' hair ties that you just kind of snap yourself.
Yeah.
Well,
is that just over time you just learn that?
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
You as you get older, you should learn, right? I hope to God that we don't do the same thing in high school and in college that we do today in our early 40s.
Right.
Hope to God we don't.
Right.
Well, wait a minute. We don't. And why don't we? Because of influence, because we're learning, because society tells us so. What is that? And same thing, right? There's moments in life where you just have to stop and self-reflect. You have to stop and figure out who am I and what am I doing? And can I read a room?
Yeah.
Can I read a room?
How's my gut?
How's my gut?
Yeah.
Check in on your gut. How am I doing?
Yeah.
And if you're honest with yourself, and I know a lot of people, it'll never happen. That'll never happen. But everybody should just take a moment, look at yourself in the mirror and go, am I serving myself right? Am I serving if you have a family, am I serving my family? Am I serving my kids? Am I serving my community? Am I serving my staff, the people that I work with, my partners? Am I serving them right? And hopefully you'll always find something that you go, you know what? I got to stop thinking this way. I got to stop thinking, and I got to close that gap.
Tweak it.
I got to close that gap.
Yeah.
Close that gap. That's a gap.
Yeah.
Close that gap. And that in itself is part of you changing your perspective on things. And it doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be big, right?
Right.
I mean, I'm not saying, hey, wake up and say, boy, I loved red. Today it's going to be blue. Well, how did that happen? I had a dream. Right?
Yes.
It doesn't happen. It's slow and methodical over time, and it's just being honest with yourself. Look in the mirror. I look myself in the mirror, and if I don't see what I like, you change it.
Yeah.
And it's not big things. It's add 10 more minutes to your workout routine.
Right.
It's how many people did you talk to today and make laugh? Those are small little things that over time, when you then look back, you'll go, oh, yeah, I guess I changed things a little bit.
Yeah,
right?
that's awesome. I mean, I always think of it as like a rock, and you just got to keep that water flowing over it. And you don't even see, I think my biggest blind spot is when you don't see results quickly, I get frustrated. At this point in life, you see time kind of running out, even though it's early 40s.
Yeah.
You still feel that, the clock. And when things don't happen right away, I start to get frustrated. But when you feel it, when you can look at, stop and say, there's still that water flowing. I'm still adding water over this rock. It's an extra minute a day or 10 minutes. I'm just one extra person. And eventually this thing is becoming fucking polished.
Right.
And it's going to be beautiful, but it's going to take from high school till early 40s, and we're not done yet. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So hopefully this keeps going until 100.
Well, and you're an incredibly successful human being, right? You're incredibly smart.
Keep going. I was just going to be quiet for a bit.
Good looking. Did I say good? Have I said good looking yet? Good looking guy, right? And so I'm sitting here going, what if anything did happen overnight?
You'd almost have to question it, right?
When do you sit there and go, maybe it's too good to be true?
Yeah.
And a lot of the times it is. And that's discernment. And that doesn't come right away either. Discernment does not come right away. Some people can catch it and feel it and sense it sooner than others, but it doesn't. Even somebody that could sense it early, right? Good, they've got great discernment, so they could sense something early. Doesn't mean that it just stops there. It only keeps getting better with age and with time. Unfortunately, it's limited, and that comes to something that I also tell people all the time: be careful with who you surround yourself with, and be careful what you decide to end up doing. So many people put in or keep themselves in certain situations because they're uncomfortable to get themselves out of it. Who's going to give you that time back?
Right.
You're telling me that you can't figure out something else to do? Find an excuse. Find something else to do. That was one of the
Let
things.
them down easy. There's a great song. Let them down easy.
I mean,
back out of it.
There's a guitar behind you. Maybe we could
start going on it.
But that's the biggest thing. One of the things you said is a family, 17 corporations. Have all of them done well? Absolutely not. Do I have good discernment? Yeah, absolutely. But hey, sometimes things don't work, and it's okay to walk away, learn from it. And try again, move on.
And I think the older that I get, the faster, the quicker that I make that decision. I've heard you say zombie projects, like in the tech world. Maybe that's in all the world, but in an operational perspective, you start to look at things and going, are we just doing this because we've been doing it? And so we're going to continue to do it. But you're not robbing just from yourself. You're robbing from your employees. You're robbing from your family and your kids. And that starts to, maybe it's because I'm losing time, or we're getting to this point in our lives where you might be half dead at this point, maybe, or getting close. And so you start to value that way more. And if I could take anything back, or if I could go back and redo anything, it would be value that time when I was 20.
Yeah.
Versus now I'm finally starting to value it. I had a good friend, I think there's a book called 18 Summers. And that's what you get with your kids. You get 18 summers. Well, now that you think of it that way, I'll be damned if I let a couple weeks of those summers go because I'm in the situation that I shouldn't be in business-wise, or hanging out with friends of friends of friends who I don't know and I don't want to invest in, instead of taking those 18 summers on full.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
but
maybe it takes getting to 40 to learn.
But
I don't know.
It's a slippery slope. And the reason why it's a slippery slope is you invest in tech. Does any, there's a few InsurTech companies that I've built up, a few MSP companies that I've built up. There's not a single person that can tell you, that's not in the business, how long it took them to be profitable and successful. And so if you ask somebody in the business, how long did it take you? They all have the same number? No. So that's what's crazy, right? Is again, if it's something that you truly believe in, and more importantly, you could find that balance, but you really don't know how long it's going to take. You never know how long it's going to take, but you have that conviction, you have that gut that it's going to be big, and you're helping people out, and you're not sacrificing time. You're not sacrificing moments away from your core, whatever that may be. Maybe your doggy, maybe your cat, maybe that guinea pig,
Guinea pigs.
kids, husband or wife, significant other. It doesn't matter, right? So it's a slippery slope. Sometimes people cut things too soon, and sometimes people let things simmer way too long. I know you love to cook. You don't want to let something that you're cooking simmer too long.
Gets super soggy.
And then it was super soggy. You've just reduced it, and you shouldn't have.
Right. Yeah, that's amazing.
You've reduced it, and that's what you're doing. Sometimes when you do something that simmers too long, you just reduced your time. You reduced your finances. You reduced your mental well-being. And
there's no return on it.
There's no return on it.
You know that when you invest in things that are right, you always get a return on it, whether it's financial, emotional, spiritual, physical, whatever.
That's right.
You work out, you get a physical return on that investment. You spend your time around the right people, and you get that mental buildup, that positivity. That's a return.
Yeah.
So maybe that's the way to judge it: is are you getting a return on this investment? And if you're not, how long do you hold an investment? What do we say in the investment world? We'll give it 12 months, and we'll play it out for 12 months. And if it's terrible, let's move it somewhere else.
Yeah.
If it's not, we'll keep it there. So you give it some time, and then say, all right, that's it. No return on investment.
Or is it like real estate? If somebody says, invest in something for 12 months and get out immediately. Now, sure, if you're flipping and whatnot, right? But part of the generational wealth aspects of things, right? Part of that is well diversification, and part of that well diversification is real estate, and some real estate you buy and you hold.
Yeah.
For 10 years,
Right.
15 years.
So you
right?
just have to decide which of those people and situations around you are real estate.
Yes.
And which one are dead stocks.
Now, at 17 years old, would you have known that?
No.
No.
But I want to talk about your 17s. Let's take a quick break so we can refresh the camera.
Okay. No, that's perfect.
All right, so let's run back now. Typically, I'll go through your life from start to finish, but we kind of jumped in the middle of it.
Yeah.
So technology's always been your thing, and I would say you bring technology to everything. And that started at 9, 10, Commodore 64 days, tearing apart computers, hacking into high school mainframes.
Can you say that? I think I may have an agreement where I can't talk about that.
We'll edit that one out.
No, you could keep it.
You're proud of that, probably.
No, that's how this goes viral.
Yeah. But so you knew then. And what was it? Was it not a conscious thing? You just were like, I really enjoy, this is fucking awesome.
I anticipated that perhaps you would ask me that question. And that was probably the only one that I really wanted to think about in advance. And I had no clue what you'd ask me. I thought we were hanging out, just talking and having some tequila. So I had no clue, and I'm glad, just because I think that some of the best dialogue happens when it's unscripted, right? Nobody needs a teleprompter
Absolutely.
and the whole bit. So, but I anticipated, and I allowed myself one question. I didn't try to overthink anything, right? I allowed myself one question. If there's one question that I think that Charles would ask me, and that is, what helped form and make me who I am today, partially, right? Especially on the technology side of the coin. And your question is, how'd you know? What got you to where you're at? How did you gravitate towards? Let me answer it by saying this. Propensity. Look it up. How many basketball, baseball, how many golfers out there where if they were given a chance to put a club or a racket or a ball in their hands, they immediately felt comfortable with it. Everything else around them was just kind of grayed out. And, for me, even before computers, I loved taking things apart. I loved taking apart my grandfather's riding lawnmower. And boy, he was not happy until I put it back together.
Right.
I'd like to say, I'd lie to you if I said, and it worked better.
Better than it was before.
It didn't. I'm not that person. And he gave me a radio. And I took the radio apart, every little piece, and I studied every little piece. It was like when I was close to anything electronic, it was like putting those elite athletes, putting that basketball in their hand at a young age, putting that golf club in their hand, putting that racket in their hands, putting those running shoes on. There's something that was spiritual. And how crazy as that would be, right? I couldn't have articulated that as a young age. But looking back, I can say, and if there's anybody out there with children, mind their propensities. Understand what you'd like for them to do. Dad or mom was a great fill in the blank. But take some time and go, what are they really gravitating towards?
Watch what they're doing.
Is that running? Is that just creating a mess? I don't know. I mean, the majority of kids do that anyway, but creativity, right?
Right.
But are they gravitating towards computers and technologies and asking just great questions?
What are they doing when you're not?
Do they like to drive? Do they like to draw? And you are a terrible artist.
Right.
Right?
Hard to swallow, but they're doing it when you're not asking them to do. Whenever you're not asking them to do something, what are they doing?
Why is it that a mother and a father, or two mothers or two fathers who've brought kids into this world, or are raising children, why is it that everybody's right-handed except for that child's left-handed? What is that? I'd like to say it's a bit of a propensity. I mean, I'm sure we could get really scientific as well. But for me, I found peace trying to figure out and understand how things worked. And so for me, it was doing anything and everything that I could, up to accidentally blowing something up, right? Working a motherboard back then. Plugging in the hard drives incorrectly. There's so many things that you could have done to literally fry a computer. I did, right? I always learn the hard way. There's something to that, right? Always read. Always push the boundaries. But be comfortable in knowing that you're going to break some stuff along the way. And when you do, boy, you really learn.
Yeah.
Because you'll never do it again.
You're learning the hard way.
But then you're going to figure out what you did, which means you're going to kind of reverse engineer your steps. Sure, it takes you a little bit longer, but you're going to get there nonetheless, and probably smarter than somebody who just followed that Lego manual, right?
Or understand it better.
Or understand it better, yeah. Absolutely understand it better. And so that was it. I felt comfort in it, and I was in an environment where, especially back then, and back then I'm 42 years old as of December.
The beautiful 80s and 90s.
It was the 80s. Yeah. It was the 80s and the early 90s where I'm getting my hands on computer manuals and programming languages and learning and blowing something up or crashing a system or permanently freezing a computer system and not being able to even format the hard drive and start all over again.
And if you were away from it, was there a sense of, I missed this, I got to get back to this?
Yeah, now here's the thing. I played baseball.
Right.
I ran track.
You were active.
I played basketball and always worked on my stand-up routine.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's paying dividends today.
Right? Thank you. Yeah. And for me, it was, I did all of that, but man, I just had this, I fell in love with learning. I fell in love with reading the hard stuff. I fell in love with knowing that I was going to break something, and it was okay. You know, as adults, you read all these books, right? Fall in love with the process, fall in love with your passions, all of those things. But, you know, now that I get to look back, I truly did fall in love with that. I loved, and I love to experiment. I love to push the envelope, and I fell in love, and I became comfortable with knowing that I was going to break something, it would be all right.
Mm-hmm. And the peace was a good word. So when people are searching for that, you know, it's easy to say follow your passion. And I was talking with Paul about this, and he says, well, what's passion? What's the difference between passion or something you just like to do? Those are two very different things. And I think that word peace might be the key to the passion. When you find yourself doing something that you have ultimate peace in, and time just flies, you lose track of time. And when you don't do that thing, your soul isn't steady. You're not at the peace.
Yeah.
That's how you identify it. That sounds like a lot of hyperbole. It sounds like a lot of stuff on the fringe, but how else do you identify what that was? Thankfully for you, it happened when you were in your teens.
Well,
I think some people still travel through life going, I know I got something, I just don't know what it is.
and how do you know? How do you know? You got to try it.
You got to try.
And and a lot of people don't because they don't know what that means, or it could screw something up or mess something up. I talk to a lot of teens. I was even talking to one of my sons who's 11 years old, one of his friends, and I go, there's nothing wrong with not knowing what you want to do or what your passions are, but it's also okay to really think about someday. So for all you 12-year-olds or 11-year-olds or teens or early 20-year-olds just getting out of college, it's okay if you've got a passion and or you have something that gives you peace, try it. If you've got people around you that support you, you're going to be okay if you break something. You're going to be okay if you break something. You'll never know. You'll never know. So for those who are younger, it's okay to know what you'd like to do with your life. It's okay. And what does that mean? That may mean a serial entrepreneur, right? Or just somebody who truly enjoys leaning in on industry and finding those gaps and filling those gaps. It may be okay to say that you're 16, 15 years old and you want to be a doctor. What does that mean for you? Right? What are you doing now?
Right.
Are you doing anything now that's going to help you prepare? Now, I'm not saying overly stress yourself out, right?
Right.
But try different things.
But you find yourself with your nose in a book all the time about anatomy or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Or, if you're in a computer technology, right? Unity. Find out what Unity is. Download it onto your computer system and experiment with it. One of the biggest things that I was intrigued with early on in 7th and 8th grade was smart technologies. Nowadays they call it IoT, Internet of Things. I always knew technology existed because early on the Windows operating system had a program that would allow you to speak into a microphone, in an old school plastic microphone, that allowed you to open up or click on the start menu by command and run certain commands by verbalizing it. And then Bill Gates, in 1994-ish, give or take, came out with a book called The Road Ahead. And The Road Ahead was about bleeding edge technologies into the future, and specifically talking about smart technologies. And that completely opened up my mind to the possibilities. So that's what I mean by that. Push the envelope.
Yeah.
Find a book. Find a good podcast. Find an audiobook. Find something that you're passionate and at peace about. And push yourself. Try to learn it. And then try to do it. And I don't mean if you want to be you're 9 years old and you want to be a surgeon someday. You need to,
Right. No Doogie Housers. No.
no,
But the beauty of doing it when you're young is maybe some of those barriers to entry, like you mentioned vulnerability earlier. I was reading a book called The War of Art.
Oh, yeah.
And that's one of the things that Stephen mentions holds you back, especially as an adult, that maybe kids don't have, is you get this idea and you say, well, maybe this is my path. This is what I'm juiced up about. But I don't want to tell anybody about it. And I certainly don't want to do it in a way that's public, because if I don't do it right or don't do it up to someone's standards, I'll be ridiculed. I'll be, with today's social media, I can't post anything, because if it's not great, then even if it's my passion, it'll destroy me. And I think as a child, you don't necessarily have any of those, hopefully, with social media, maybe that's gone. Maybe the vulnerabilities are just completely gone because everybody sees everything. But hopefully as a child, you don't have that framework to think about, well, what if I do want to be a surgeon and I'm reading all these doctor books? Am I going to get a hard time? Or I start talking to my friends about all of these different fields I want to go into, and I'm going to get a hard time about, you're never going to do that. So sometimes as an adult, I think more often than the kids, we have that barrier to entry where we say, I kind of want to do this, but I kind of don't want to let anyone else know that I want to do this, because what if I fail?
Speak it.
And I've done that. Well, I've done that even recently with you when we've had a business idea, and like it's a grand idea, and you go, but fuck, what if I don't nail it? What if it doesn't work?
Yeah.
And I think that's when, as you get older, you just go, hey, what do I got to lose?
And forget about getting older, right?
Right.
Speak it. Speak it. And the ones that ridicule you, distance yourself.
And I think speaking it is the hardest part of it.
Yeah.
Because once you speak it, you can't go back, almost, right? Once you put it out there in the ether and say, this is my plan, and you have people around you that love you, that are going to hold you accountable and going to go check in with you, they're going to check in with you, and they're going to go, how's that plan going? But after you've spoken it, now it's out there. You can't take it back.
Right. And guess what? Let's just say it doesn't work out. Well, now what?
Well, there's a fear,
You've learned,
right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You've learned. I mean, you've learned. But here's the thing. That fear, that gap, fear is a gap. It shortens. Now, I'm not saying go out there and start spouting out all sorts of crazy things that you're gonna do, and then you don't end up doing it. But what I'm saying is, you're gonna speak it, and you're gonna try it. And if it doesn't work out, you may get ridiculed. You're probably going to get ridiculed. But keep going. Keep going. When I was in 7th grade, early 90s, and I'm printing Fortran, COBOL, SendMail, Unix-based operating system commands, and the whole entire bit. You think that my sphere of influence as a 7th grader had any clue what I was doing? No, but you know what they did say? What a dork. Why don't you come out and play more basketball with me? Why don't you watch Seinfeld? Why don't you do... Now, nobody sat there calling me terrible names.
Right.
And by the way, if anyone's calling you terrible names, you should probably recheck your sphere of influence.
Right. But you could feel it.
I could feel it, right? But I just kept pursuing because I fell in love with the process. I fell in love with reading and with learning and pushing the envelope. I wasn't, right? Neither of my parents were school teachers, steel workers. It's not like, oh, yeah, it was definitely in their DNA.
Right. And so potentially they weren't even understanding what you were doing.
No, that's my point, right? And so if it didn't work out, well, now what? It could have shut me down. I hopefully would have had an aunt or an uncle or my mom or my dad saying, hey, it's all right. All right, try the next thing. Boy, you're great at sales. I'm hoping.
Right.
But if not, and nowadays, hopefully people are looking at videos and podcasts and YouTube videos and stuff where they are surrounding themselves with positive reinforcements. And what I mean by positive reinforcements is, hey, listen, nothing's easy. If it was, we talked earlier today about, well, you should be pretty skeptical then. If it was really that easy. Wow, you served millions of consumers and made a ton of money in your first year. Congratulations. wait a minute.
Right.
So, it's
If it was easy,
if
everybody would be doing
everybody
it.
would be doing it, and everybody would be, if that was the case, you'd get around, and then everybody would be skeptical.
And then would stop being easy.
And then it'd be stopped immediately.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
You read a lot. What was your favorite book of 2022 last year?
It's interesting. I reread it. I reread this book in 2022, and it's called The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. And that was an incredibly powerful book because it talks about journey, and it talks about how difficult life can be and the people that you meet along the way. And it just reinforces sometimes a mindset that you've had, or gives you a new one, gives you a new perspective, or it gives you a new way of looking at the fact that it's not easy. There's either somebody who's going to either tear you down, or there's somebody that's going to build you up along the way. Sometimes you could plan it and sometimes you can't. But be strong.
Yeah. That's awesome. Alchemist.
Stay in. The Alchemist. Paulo Coelho, yes.
So a big part of what you're doing now is bringing technology to insurance agents, advisors, hedge funds, insurance companies, reinsurers. Would you say that takes most of your time? And what are you most excited about in that sphere?
Everybody uses the word disruption, right? So I'm not gonna use that word. Not being motivated solely by money, and knowing that you can truly do something different that nobody is doing today is what's exciting. And that is something that I always held on to ever since I was a little kid. How many kids at 9 years old, 8 years old, taking apart all these things, not losing that baby screw,
right,
and putting it all together? As an adult, going, if I could serve my community in a way that puts them in a better spot and better situation, but also allowing me and my investors to also benefit and to serve them, all while doing something that nobody else has done before, boy, I feel great about it. And I love to see my family, my sphere of influence, see me pull it off.
Right.
And that's just something I absolutely, truly, truly enjoy.
And I hope people can grab that and say, and look back, because that's been a thread since 8 or 9, right? And to this day, I know how you create new opportunities, and a lot of times it's by peeling back what somebody's doing, taking it apart on the shag carpet with the extra screws,
right,
and going, now I see what's on the inside, and because I didn't follow the user manual on taking it apart, I'm going to put it back together my own way, and it's going to be better, and it's going to do things that haven't been done before.
Right.
And you were doing that when you were 9.
Right.
You're still doing that today.
Right.
And
you look
awesome.
And you look at Elon Musk, you look at Bill Gates, you look at some of these individuals. For the most part, everything is for the most part been found. It's been invented. But it's about how you've taken all of those things and put it together just differently and called it Tesla. Right? I mean, rockets have been around for how long? But you have SpaceX doing things differently.
Right.
Right? I mean, AI has been around for a long period of time. But to now be able to take it and make it user-friendly.
Does that scare you at all, that program? The Terminator, right?
Right, exactly right. So,
What are they,
so you better be nice to the machine, right? Be careful what you're putting.
What you input?
It. No, but you think about that, right? They've just done it a little bit. They've tweaked it. They've done it just a little bit differently, in the face of everybody telling them they're crazy. And then now recently Microsoft purchased, I think it was $10 billion.
Big stake.
A big stake
So they believe in it.
in open AI.
It's a little eerie.
ChatGPT.
Have you used it yet?
I've seen my 11-year-old use it.
Okay. It's eerie because what it comes back with is you feel like someone's on the other side of a keyboard typing to you this response. It's very conversational. It's very human-like. And it's crazy what it knows when you ask it a very simple question. Does it ever get to, I mean, this partners with, what is this, Neuralink or the chip?
Yeah.
And these things come together and all of a sudden we have people that aren't really people that are smarter, better, faster than us? You think it goes there?
Yeah, we'll go there. It will
And
go there.
how do we control
Well,
that?
and I think a lot of that is a lot of the governments, different world governments, putting a guideline in place to try to understand and to figure that out. I mean, over the last few months, we've got a lot of researchers that are sitting there saying, "Wait a minute, this could be alive." And so,
I mean, it seems so far-fetched. I mean, we were watching movies in the 80s where it was, I guess back then it was the 2020s, right?
Yeah.
Or the year 2000 when this was happening. So then at some point, if someone says, well, we need to pull the plug on this, is there some big Supreme Court case that says, wait a minute, this thing might actually have conscious, I mean, that's a big leap, right?
well, so now that's going to happen, right? I mean, if you ask people in the 1800s who had a horse and a buggy, do you think someday vehicles would go 0 to 60 in 1.8 seconds? They'd say, well, no. But let's have a syncretic discussion about this. If it did, would world governments have to get together and regulate speed? Would we have to regulate how roads are created and constructed? Would we have to deem certain vehicles as roadworthy or not? And that's just part of the whole evolutionary process.
Right. So the only
answer
difference
is
here being it could be a living thing or a conscious thing, I guess.
Yeah.
What's the difference? And
I think that's where we're going to get to is who's to define that,
right,
how it's defined, and then for the next 100 or 200 years, there will be fights in Supreme Court court cases that either change or uphold what the definition of this evolved AI ends up being, which is interesting. I think it creates a lot of jobs. Right.
does it get rid of which ones are in danger?
I hope that it creates more jobs than it takes away.
Yeah.
I mean, you do have this automation aspect of things, but I do hope that businesses and governments are conscious enough to be able to understand what the impacts are. I mean, they clearly are when they either try to or don't clear a specific field for development. There's a lot of research that goes in on the environmental impacts of things. So hopefully, that is done to say, well, if this happens and occurs, what's the revenge effect? What is the revenge effect to fully embracing this evolved AI? Okay, well,
and certain countries having a malicious intent versus an altruistic intent, which is going to happen.
Always be. In
Yeah.
any of the industries that I'm in or you're in, you'll always have those bad apples. Some you catch, some you don't. And the ones you catch, from what we've talked about earlier, that's a learning experience. So what does that mean? Well, how do we learn from it and how do we better ourselves to ensure the fact that we don't invest in a Ponzi scheme?
Right.
Or we don't put ourselves with something that's going bankrupt and billions of dollars are immediately just evaporated. Right? I mean, unfortunately.
And yet that was so easy to happen. I mean, you're talking about FTX, that this guy's been around since 2019. 4 years in this business. Not 4 years in this company, 4 years in this industry at all. And yet billions and billions of dollars, celebrity endorsements. I mean, a massive company, gigantic company in that amount of time. How did everybody fall for that so easy? And why do we think that AI wouldn't be the same?
Well, here's the thing, and this is part of the guidelines, or getting to the guidelines or the guardrails, and try to get it as close as possible to allowing a corporation to operate without massive amounts of regulations, allowing massive hundreds of millions of dollars and hundreds of thousands of jobs to be created and put back into the economy without completely overcomplicating and or just killing the end user's altruistic goal and thought of what they're investing themselves into. So, like, as an example, was there any wrongdoing with the whole FTX deal? If the answer is yes, and why?
Why and how do you stop that?
Why and how do you stop that? So, but now when you're pushing,
some of it you can't though.
No, with new industry though, or new growth, right? Everybody gets excited about something because everybody together is making a bunch of money.
Right.
Until what? Until you take a left turn. The only thing that you can do in life is to be educated. Is to do something because you've thought it through and you've done your own research. Educate yourself. Educate yourself. People are going to tell you that the sky is green, and they're going to tell you all the reasons why, and it's going to sound right. And some people are going to tell you it's blue and why it's blue. And then do your own research and come to your own conclusions, specific to crypto or any other opportunities.
Yeah. A little due diligence.
People get excited because everybody else is making great returns or doing something. Tech. Let me put this tech in my arm and it's going to make me stronger because these people are doing it and did it and it didn't kill them and it made them strong. Let me just put tech on my arms. Or it doesn't matter what industry it is. I don't want to specifically pick on the crypto industries,
right.
But do your own research. If you're going to put your blood, sweat, and tears, your money into something, spend the time. Now, you can do everything that you can being a great driver, pull out of your driveway and get hit by a car.
Right.
Nothing is 100%, right?
But for God's sakes, put your seatbelt on.
Put your seatbelt on.
Make sure your car runs. Do some due diligence.
And that's it.
And it doesn't take that much to. I mean, this guy had 33 companies, and back to this, not picking on this guy, but 33 different shell companies and moving money everywhere. It wouldn't have taken a big shovel to dig through some of that shit to understand what was going on there, and yet nobody did it.
Right. And when you get to a point where you're truly disrupting retirement and money getting
People's
put
lives.
in and putting lives, at what point do you go, well, who's going to uncover that? Who's going to at least say, this is what's happening and going on? Would anyone even have known? You and I may have figured that out, but would the average individual who's sitting there taking all of their tips and putting into that exchange, would they have known that? I don't know.
No, I think the answer is,
do they do their research, or are they being influenced by their sphere of influence?
Yeah.
And I know how important spheres of influence are, but you got to do your own. You've got to do your own research, and it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get burned. I've been burned. I'm sure you've been burned. We've tried it, and we've learned from it.
Yeah.
We've learned from it. I tell my kids all the time, hey, you come back with a bad grade, I'm not going to yell at you. I'll be disappointed if you don't tell me what you could have done differently. I would be disappointed if you didn't look into your mistake and learn from it so that you don't do it again.
Right. Well, someone's got to run Skynet.
Just be kind.
Be careful what you input.
Be kind to the AI, right? Think about this. In the 80s and 90s, the slogan was "Be kind, rewind."
Right.
Now half the population doesn't even know what that means.
Right. And the other half probably didn't do it.
Exactly. No. Exactly. That was okay. That was another $2 fee. Right. So the video
kind
companies were
to
making money.
AI.
Be kind to AI.
I think that's probably the best lesson so far.
Yeah, exactly right. Because you never know.
Oh, love it. What regrets? Do you have any regrets up until 41? Right?
Yeah.
What or are there any?
You know, it's. I feel like there's few schools of thought there, right? With regrets, and let me speak on them both. People have interesting childhoods. People have struggles, and if they get through them and they're bigger and better for it, then would you have changed it? In certain extreme situations and incidences, yes.
Right.
But for some, maybe not. For me, it was a balance. Any regrets that I have is around ensuring the fact that my life is properly balanced. When you get super focused on self-help and motivational books and the whole entire bit, you could absolutely tip the scales. When you get so extreme on your passion and it giving you peace, it could tip the scales
Negatively.
negatively.
Sacrificing
All sorts of things.
right.
And so for me, I wish I had the opportunity to learn this. I wish somebody would have told me that earlier and held me accountable. And so I'd say that, if there was any regrets, it would have been to have learned when to hold them and when to fold them sooner, and balance, a good life balance. But what's interesting? We're all always there. We are always a work in progress. We should always be a work in progress. And if you don't feel like you're a work in progress, then you're not surrounding yourselves with people that are pushing you. You're not surrounding yourselves with somebody who is telling you to continue to better your position and your family's position. Because, like I said earlier, if you're comfortable, nothing happens.
Nothing good is happening.
Nothing happens in comfort. And so, that
regret is a lot like that water over the rock. There's going to be some muddy water, but it's part of that process, right?
Yeah.
You don't get where you are today without some of it. Could you be further? Could you have less scars potentially, but probably not, and end up in this spot, in this seat, the same person you are today.
Yeah, that's correct.
Good.
That's correct. And I'll say, some things in life are more forgiving than others, right? The most forgiving person that I've ever met in my entire life, and I get choked up, is my wife, right? Some people have them, some people don't. Some people have husbands, some people don't. Some people have life partners. And that was one person who stood by me through all these ideas and aspirations, and it was probably the person who is the most forgiving human being, an enlightened person, and person who has encouraged me. And so if you don't have that, or if you're 12 or 15 or 18, or surround yourself with something or somebody, even if it's a good book, or even if it's a good podcast, that'll get you there.
Yeah.
Because life isn't easy, and people need to remind you that you're out of balance. People need to remind you that you're in a hard situation and you're not smiling. Somebody needs to remind you that you've done it and you've made great money, but you need to better your position still. You need to help others. There's more that you can do. There's more influence that you could provide and spread out in this world, right? We shouldn't be done until we can't operate anymore.
Yeah. And that partnership might be the number one decision. I mean, if I had to drill something into my kids, it would be that's the partnership. Whoever you choose to be a partner in life, whether it's friends or spouses or love, whatever it is, if you're going to partner with that person, you're going to go 10 times further. I mean, you look at all the greats, and I mean, Steve Jobs had his Tim Cook. Bill Gates had his, I don't know what that guy's name is, but he had that guy.
Steve, yeah.
Yeah. So all of that stuff was there, and that's how far they went. And when I think about marriage, what you said is so right, because if you pick the wrong one, which I have done, your life goes in an entirely different direction, and you bang your head against the wall and go, what is happening? And you look inside and you go, what's wrong with me? You look outside, you go, what's wrong with them? What's wrong with the world? There's always something, there's always that strife, there's always that unsettledness that holds back not only your personal life, but your business life. And then when you choose that right person, it's almost like, well, first of all, it's very easy to take for granted because it becomes effortless. You don't realize the day-to-days and the support that you're getting because I have gotten it from the beginning. And so when you get to a point and you look back at a 10-year anniversary and you go, well, fuck, I would have been in a much worse place if I would not have chose that person.
Yeah.
And I think it's important for them to know that, but also to affirm that decision constantly, because that's what keeps some of the spice there too, right? I mean, you got to 10 years in. Well, how long have you known Ashley? 20 years?
20 years.
20 years. You're 20 years into this. And I know some of the things you do for spice, like you have flawless bathroom selfies.
That's
but
right.
I'm sure there's a lot more that goes into
at restaurants, by the way. I don't want you to think that. I don't want people thinking that I'm taking random.
And I'm not trying to let out too many bathroom or too many family secrets here, but
that's right, because the lighting's great in some of those restaurant bathrooms. No, but that's true. It starts with you though. Believe in yourself. Believe in yourself. And as soon as you start believing yourself, inevitably you will find somebody that believes in you as well. And if you truly do, and you find somebody, you'll immediately know whether or not, through the thick and the thin, through the good and the bad, through burning your boats and you winning or not, will still be by your side.
That's awesome.
Start with you first.
Yeah, I want to end there because that's such a high point, but it's going to get better because I got to ask you, what would you leave to your kids? What would you, if this is the last thing that they heard you say, what would it be?
Oh, so you talk about my kids and I get emotional. Oh, my kids. Life is so short. Do what you love. Find people that love you. And if I'm gone, remember all the fun. Remember the times and the moments I said, let's do this. And it's going to be hilarious. And it's going to be uncomfortable. But it's going to create an incredible memory. Pass that on. My legacy is my children. Nothing else. That'll be ran by people that I know, and then 100, 200 years, I'll never know. But my kids have the ability to take the things that I do and how I react to moments, and they can use it for themselves and they can pass it down to their children. So enjoy this fleeting life. Find those moments. Don't wait for something or somebody to bring you happiness. You can do it. You've seen your father do it. Bring it yourself, and then bring people along. And keep that going, because we need more people that smile in hard situations. We need more people to go up to somebody who's having a bad day and tipping you off and tell them they're loved, because you have no clue what they're going through. You have no clue what they're experiencing. But you just may have saved a life that day. And those individuals will have passed it down to people and may have learned from something as well. Regardless of my work ethic or the amount of money I've made or haven't made, we all have the opportunity to lean in on situations, make a memory, laugh about it, and then keep that alive for generations to come.
Now you got me choked up. Well said, sir. And you are creating those memories constantly. And it's one of the things I love most about you. It's awesome.
Love you too.
All right, let me lighten this up before we get out of here.
All right.
What's on your get shit done playlist? I always come back to the music at the end to say, if you gotta rock something out, no one can bother you. Let's get this project done, but I'm gonna crank it. Who are you cranking?
Oof. Wow. I mean, I would probably have to say, Live Your Life.
Really? Well done.
Yeah.
Now I have to go play that.
That's exactly right.
That's what starts
it's
it,
a
though.
little, yeah, that's it. I mean, it's it can kind of get you going. I think, a few movies and a few episodes of TV shows have played that song as well.
Yeah.
And
Live Your Life.
Live Your Life. Lil Wayne.
All right, Google it, everybody. Hey, I love you. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Cheers.
All right, cheers.
Acrylic Financial Incorporated is a registered investment advisor, and the opinions expressed by those on this show are their own and do not reflect the opinions of Acrylic Financial. All statements and opinions expressed are based upon information considered reliable, although it should not be relied upon as such. Any statements or opinions are subject to change without notice. Information presented is for educational purposes only and does not intend to make an offer or solicitation for the sale or purchase of any specific securities, investments, or investment strategies. Investments involve risk and, unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Information expressed does not take into account your specific situation or objectives and is not intended as recommendations appropriate for any individual. Listeners are encouraged to seek advice from a qualified tax, legal, or investment advisor to determine whether any information presented may be suitable for their specific situation. Past performance is not indicative of future performance, and some guests may have been paid a fee to be interviewed for this show.